Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi everyone, and welcome to another Woke Wednesday. This podcast was created to shed light on different societal issues which have been at the forefront of public discourse through one of the most divisive times in American history. More so, it was created with the intent of allowing those who have often been neglected, shunned, or misunderstood to have a chance to share their experiences and thoughts. I hope this dialogue encourages critical conversations and activism amongst all listeners, and I hope you'll tell all your friends about it and share on your social platforms. Well, first off, let me tell y'all, I really don't know. I'm like in an actual recording studio for the first time ever doing this, and all of this stuff is so confusing. Like, literally, there are so many like bars, is it beats, ticks? I don't know what any of that means, so please bear with me as we tackle this first episode because I am not technologically savvy. I'm just not. So, yeah, please bear with me. Please give me grace because your girl is lost, but we are going to push through. I wanted to give you all a little highlight on the current events that I specifically have been paying attention to.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
So, this week, Nike released an ad featuring Colin Kaepernick and Serena Williams. Kaepernick's ad specifically said, "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything." And Serena's ad said, "Girls from Compton don't play tennis, they own it." Now, Kaepernick being the face of Nike's 30th anniversary brought so many different reactions, opinions, and perspectives. You have one side that praises Nike for showcasing Kaepernick after being ousted by the NFL after choosing to kneel during the national anthem in protest of police brutality and black inequity. Yet you have this other side that began protesting Nike themselves by burning their products and claiming that they'll no longer support a business that supports such an unpatriotic and un-American figure. Now, for me personally, choosing Kaepernick as the face of Nike's 30th anniversary comes with very fleeting hope. What I mean by this is while he is deserving of being showcased in such a meaningful way, because I absolutely agree with what he's doing, I have been 100% behind him as he's been protesting in the NFL. I'm just not sure if I agree with Nike being the way his protest is vocalized. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of this entire debate is the fact that when news circulated around Nike's use of sweatshops and labor law and child labor, I didn't see any burning of Nike gear or even any of the same outrage or anger that people have been displaying. Yet when Nike decides to feature a man whose protest against black injustice is at the forefront of things, people are so quick to say, no, we're not going to support that. And for me, that raises the question, why is it so easy for people to turn a blind eye to injustices being highlighted by black people? But when a billion-dollar company that has been reported to underpay its workers, have them work in unsafe conditions, and things like that, there is no type of fuss or any outrage. I just really don't understand the hypocrisy of it all. Now, in regards to Serena's ad, this was released right after the French Open president, and I quote, banned Williams' catsuit from the tournament, claiming that one must respect the game and the place. Yet one tiny detail that I feel like has been lost in the entirety of Nike creating this cat suit specifically for Williams is that when she was in childbirth, she literally almost died due to blood clots. And the suit was built for her health. It was built to maintain her health after this huge health scare. So it's just kind of confusing as to why French Open would decide that her cat suit does not respect the game or the place. And then another factor that has not been talked about in relation to this so-called ban on her cat suit, Serena has been drug tested double the amount of times in comparison to other female athletes, tennis athletes, in this year alone. Like, that's insane. Now, do we know for sure, is Williams being singled out because of her race? No, of course not. But she even tweeted, well, it's that time of the day to get randomly drug tested and only to test Serena. Out of all the players, it's been proven I'm the one getting tested the most. Discrimination? I think so. At least I'll be keeping the sport clean. Hashtag stay positive. Now, while I can't say for sure that she's being discriminated solely because of her race, I think it's important that we point out that because she is being tested more, obviously she has a right to feel that there's some specific reason for that. And if the reason for her personally is for her race, then I think that's something worth talking about and something worth investigating. And more so in regards to the events at the U.S. Open, which, side note, I am still a little bitter that she lost, even though I love Naomi. Obviously, I wanted her to get her 24th Grand Slam. Anyways, Williams rightfully showed her emotions after being penalized for receiving coaching, even though she literally said, I was not receiving coaching. She said it multiple times. She responded in a way that most athletes, I feel like, in my opinion, would have if their character was attacked and that they were assumed to be cheating. However, we've seen, or I've seen personally, in specific media outlets that people have said she has been throwing tantrums and that she overreacted. Specifically, this one New York Times article quoted and said, but it must also be pointed out that the match was ruined and Osaka's great moment was clouded because Williams let her temper get the best of her and Ramos couldn't find a better way to retake control of the match. Now, let's be real clear about something. Literally, Serena showed the most sportsmanship whenever the crowd was literally booing Naomi after being announced that she was the winner. Williams did not ruin her moment at all. If anything, she tried to resolve the situation by asking the crowd, please do not boo. This is her first Grand Slam. That's your only first Grand Slam title. Like, that's it. It's done. So I definitely don't agree with the assertion that Williams ruined her moment at all. Like, no, she did not. But for me, this brings up the feeling, why is it that when a Black woman is expressing her emotions, the media stereotypes her as this angry Black woman? This was going to be her 24th Grand Slam title. And even if it wasn't, she reacted in a way that any person would, if not more, especially if she was a man. So I just don't really understand why is it that Black women specifically voice their opinions. It's taken out of context and we're stereotyped and we're treated less than. But overall, Nike's display of these two athletes is definitely needed. I'm just wondering, like, the motivations behind specifically choosing Colin Kaepernick. I just think that's a conversation that needs to be talked about when this is a company that literally has records of human rights abuses. Now, fast forward to what we're actually talking about in this episode. Most of you know I just moved to Houston, Texas to teach social studies and women's studies, which has literally been a dream and also Not gonna lie, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I wanted to focus on education and how the U.S. educational system has come to what it is today. When Brown v. Board was passed, one specific effect that I believe the general public might be unaware of is the overwhelming displacement of Black teachers and its now impact on schools today. Now, while Brown v. Board might have protected the education of Black and Brown students, it didn't protect the jobs of the teachers and the administrators. And what I mean by that, an insane amount of people lost their jobs. That number is actually 38,000 jobs in 21 southern states alone. Now, for me, I think it's insane that although our country in some parts of the world were rejoicing because of this monumental decisions and rioting in other parts, many didn't really notice the hardships that would come for those already in the educational field, the teachers. And now this isn't to say that these 38,000 jobs that were lost, like it wasn't to say that they were at all coincidental or purposeless. People lost their jobs because either teaching contracts weren't renewed or Black teachers were reassigned to white schools. And through that experience, they were just met with so much hostility and discrimination from the white students that they ended up quitting their jobs, and rightfully so. Now, fast forward to today, for the most part, you'll not only see a noticeable difference in the color of skin in the classroom, but also in expectations of specific students across racial lines. It's actually reported that non-Black teachers have a significantly lower expectation for their Black students' success than their white counterparts. And by significant, I mean there's a 30% gap. Now, I'm not saying this statistic in order to degrade non-Black teachers or demonize them. And I don't even want to make the assumption that this is happening because all non-Black teachers are racist or prejudiced, because I don't even think that's the entire issue. Another key factor that goes hand in hand with this statistic is the fact that non-Black teachers are more likely to enforce punishment for their Black students than their non-Black peers. And what I think is first and foremost the most important thing to recognize is that our individual implicit bias has a huge role in which of our students are succeeding and which ones aren't. I think as educators specifically, we need to begin asking questions like, well, which students am I belittling more? Which ones am I praising more? And why is that? Why am I more likely to praise this student over the next? And why am I more likely to enforce this punishment for minor infractions, whether it's dress code, whether it's talking back, whether it's chewing gum, whatever the infraction is? Why am I more likely to enforce a punishment for this specific student over the next? And another point that goes into this idea of being able to shift our implicit bias to be more favorable for our students is the overall opportunities our students are given to be placed in these higher performing classes like AP and honors and IB. Not only are teachers more likely to recommend Asian and white students for more rigorous courses, these type of classes are just offered more in suburban middle class communities. Now, this practice of tracking or placing students in these higher performing class has been seen as controversial because historically, underserved demographics have not had the equal opportunity of even taking these classes or even having the option for them to be placed in their schools. But that doesn't just start in high school. Statistics also show that tracking practices beginning in middle school have an insane effect on passing the AP exam that high school students will take. And not just passing it with a standard 3 score, but receiving an exemplary score. If children are given equitable opportunities from the very beginning, the achievement and opportunity gaps will begin to decrease significantly. For me, as a middle school social studies teacher, implementing critical analysis in regards to a discussion-based question is something I plan on focusing on this year. I want my students to have the most preparation for the AP exam that they'll take in 11th grade. And I think by building these foundational skills at a young age, by molding these students, by getting their brains focused on what's going to be coming in the future, because it is going to be coming a lot sooner than people realize, I think that has a much more significant effect than by assuming that, oh, it's fine, we'll just let their high school teachers take care of it. No. As middle school teachers, even, we need to be thinking about these things so that our children are given the utmost preparation and what they need to be successful in the future. Now, let's shift it to a more personal note. As a high schooler, I attended a predominantly black high school. And for me, one thing that I particularly remember was the praise that I received from, honestly, from the time I was in elementary school up until now, for being the smart black girl, in comparison to the degrading comments I often heard or saw from my black peers that weren't in the honors and AP classes that I was in. Educators coming to terms with their implicit bias is so important to ensure the success of our students and to ensure that we're providing a inclusive and carefree atmosphere for our students. Now, I honestly think that a lot of the comments they made, they weren't aware of how harmful and offensive they actually are. But as a teacher myself now, I see the harm and the damage that a teacher's biased opinions can have on students. A teacher being able to expend the needed effort on not just some of their students, but all of them, can be such an impactful factor in how many students are privileged enough to receive equitable resources and how many aren't. And even though, yeah, I did attend a majority black high school, looking back, the teacher to student racial demographic was hardly ever equal. In fact, I've actually never had a black teacher. Now, with all of these different statistics and facts that I've been mentioning, one of the biggest problems about our education system on a national level is having meaningful, culturally competent representation that are going to look at these different atrocities that have been occurring throughout the years in our education system and actually work to fix them. Yet, if you look at our current Secretary of Education, she believes in voucher tax programs to send our children to private schools, is a huge proponent for charter schools, and a huge opponent of public schools. Now, obviously, I'm not against charter schools as a whole because I'm literally teaching at one right now, so let's not even go there. But as someone who was raised in the public school system, I am a huge advocate for us revamping the public school system in order to serve the kids that attend these schools in meaningful ways that are going to propel them to the next level and to the college or university or career path of their choice. On a global scale, a lot of people don't talk about the fact that, or if they do, it's not enough, that the US is actually behind in areas of math, science, and reading in comparison to other advanced nations. Now, for me, that raises a red flag because if the United States is to be this huge powerhouse country that many of us believe we are, why is it that our education system lacks in some of these fundamental areas? And why is it that these smaller countries that, although might be seemingly advanced, they're even surpassing us in these specific areas? What's even more alarming is recently the Trump administration proposed a plan that would grant $1 billion in private school vouchers. Now, $1 billion that's specifically delegated to private schools, while yes, it helps certain specific demographics, a lot of those demographics don't include low-income minority communities that are consistently ignored. And for me, that's problematic because if we're, as this country portrays itself as this entity that is for the people, that stands on equality and freedom and ideals like that, if that's the case, then the demographics and the neighborhoods that are constantly ignored and constantly shoved to the side, they're the ones that we need to be catering to and serving much more than those who are already at the top and those that are already thriving.
As a kid from Akron, Ohio myself, I remember walking these same streets. I remember walking North Street, West Market. I remember walking behind here on Crosby, going to Harris Elementary, riding my bike throughout the rest of the city. So when people ask me why a school, that's part of the reason why, because I know exactly what these 240 kids are going through. I know the streets they walk. I know the trials and tribulations that they go through. I know the ups, the downs. I know everything that they dream about. I know all the nightmares that they have because I've been there. I know exactly what they're going through. So, they're the reason why this school is here today.
Let's take it to a more positive note, right? Because I want to be able to end things positively and with good vibes. Now, different initiatives that have been occurring recently that are specifically pinpointed to help low-income minority-based communities are LeBron James I Promise School and then Derrick Rose Scholarship Program. Specifically, LeBron James School really stands out to me because not only is it focusing on the educational needs of his hometown, but also the socioeconomic ones. And socioeconomic status is a huge predictor of a school's success and whether or not a school will have specific resources in comparison to schools whose socioeconomic status might be on the lower end. I really like that his program, it focuses on job placement, GED programs for the parents of these students, free transportation to school. There's a food pantry at school for students and their families to be able to come to. Now, for me, like looking at all of these factors, all of these encompassing factors, that is how you tackle systemic oppression and systemic inequity. Because choosing to only focus on one specific issue, while it is helpful, it's much more meaningful and impactful if we tackle the entire system and how it has broken down and dismantled and literally torn apart people's lives. So for me, I think it's extremely, extremely encouraging to see someone who is literally at the top of his field in basketball doing this for kids who literally might not have food tomorrow. But for him, he's like, no. Although I was able to make it out of that situation, I want to be able to do that for others as well. So those are just some of the takes that I find extremely important in relation to the education system and that I want others to find important as well, because these specific issues are affecting our communities and they need to be talked about. I'm definitely going to post a link in the notes if you'd like to support LeBron's project, as well as links to the different articles that I referenced throughout this episode. I hope this episode was informative and thought-provoking for all that listened and for those that will listen in the future. I hope all of the data, the stats, the facts, everything, the humor, ignites a desire to help dismantle the systemic oppression surrounding our education system. And remember, all of these opinions are my own, but they should be everyone else's. Have a woke Wednesday. Thank you for another Woke Wednesday. Transcripts of entire episodes will be available on the Woke Wednesday website. Episodes are written and produced by Hannah Mason and Trey Leonard of Lenico Entertainment. Episodes are hosted by Hannah Mason and edited by Trey Leonard. All graphics are designed by Anna French, and texts used throughout this episode are brought to you by Nike and Global News.